Hello and welcome to another episode of the Thom and Joe Show. I'm Joe.
I'm Tom.
And I am so home right now. This is my home.
Yeah.
2 in the morning, little bit of rainfall outside, little bit of melancholy. What is the number one thing I am putting on for the mood? And that is
what are you putting on, Joe?
today's anniversary record, Portishead's Dummy, which is, like, I did not realize how much this is a part of me until I started working on this episode, and it's just like, I could not stop listening to Portishead, at least the first two albums, and they're live in Roseland, New York City.
Yeah.
But, like, this is...
This is gonna be a Joe heavy episode, guys.
probably. But it's part of my history, and of course, as it all goes back to when I was forming my music taste in the teenage years, and I came upon the Saint soundtrack, which has been mentioned more than a couple times.
Yep.
It did not have Portishead on it, but it did have trip hop like Everything But the Girl and Sneaker Pimps, their famous Six Underground.
Sneaker Pimps.
So I went to Everything But the Girl and Sneaker Pimps. Their debut, Sneaker Pimps kind of exploded themselves in a weird way.
Yeah.
It's a long story, but they kind of fired their singer because they didn't want to make music like that anymore, and then Virgin fired them for doing that, and they just went on from there. Long story short. But then I got recommended Portishead, and I picked up Dummy, and it's just like, I never stopped listening to Dummy for all of my mid-20s, which was the 2000s. But I think I started listening to it at the perfect time, like, or at least I must have picked it up again, because, like, this is, like, mid-20s, like, malaise all over it.
This is what you sort of basically. So obviously, as we'll come on to talking shortly about this, I am fairly new to Port. Surprisingly enough, given they are British, and all of them are British, and they are from Bristol. This is I think our first visit to Bristol in the podcast. Yep.
Yeah.
We will doubtless be back because I will want to talk about a certain album by another Bristol band at some point in the next couple of years, which is another trip hop band. I'm not as familiar with Portishead as Joe is. My knowledge of trip hop is essentially the other big Bristolian band, which is of course Massive Attack.
Yes, and I have a mixed history with Massive Attack. I don't think I have 3 of their albums, and I don't think I can ever make it through one of their albums on one listen, because they're interesting. They will have songs that are 10 out of 10 masterpieces, and then they will have songs I can't stand. Like, if you've ever owned the Mission Impossible soundtrack, the original one, the original movie, not the series, but they have Spyglass by Massive Attack on it, and I cannot stand that song. I don't know what it's doing. I don't know why it's doing it, but it's doing something. So, like, there's that, but then there's Protection with Tracy Thorn, and Protection with Tracy Thorn is tied for my favorite song of all time.
Oh, damn.
I absolutely love that song.
Yeah.
It is, if you want to know the other one, it is, from the Wolf's Rain soundtrack. Friends, I think it's called Friends. Like, my name suddenly blanked on it, but it's by Yoko Kanno and Raj Ramaya.
And there, ladies and gentlemen, is the dichotomy of the Thom and Joe show.
Thom and Joe show. It goes from, like, super nerd music to super nerd anime. So there that is. And
they sort of exist in a very different sort of, sonic environment to Portishead. I think we'll sort of vaguely talk about trip hop. So trip hop is sort of like, it is a very British genre, because I don't think it ever really crossed over to the United States. Essentially speaking, it is a mixture, as the name may suggest, of, you know, hip hop beats and, you know, more experimental stuff. I mean, sort of stuff like, you know, you're getting into like the more experimental stuff of, like, you know, a Grandmaster Flash, etc., that sort of stuff. But then it's sort of taken to the nth degree, and a lot of it obviously is, you know, formed in Bristol, and obviously Bristol being a port town, Bristol obviously goes, you know, there's guys coming in for Jamaica with like these massive sound systems, you know, and obviously dub, and, you know, and obviously, you know, a lot of that is, you know, notable, particularly in a group. Essentially, you know, it becomes like the sound of Bristol. You know, the Bristol Underground, the Wild Bunch, which obviously includes people from, you know, obviously from Massive Attack, including Robert 3D Delanage, a person who, by the way, is potentially Banksy, but we're not going to get too much into that. You know, indeed,
another
obviously
story for another day.
Yeah, you know. Banksy and graffiti and visual. There is obviously a visual element to this. You know, obviously Robert Delanage would bring stenciling to Bristol, and, you know, obviously that would, and you know, I hesitate to call Portishead part of this movement. They are absolutely part of the movement in that they are a trip hop band from Bristol, but sort of like, you know, their edition, their sort of sensibility of trip hop is basically the only thing that really links Portishead to things like Massive Attack is the way the beats are produced, and, you know, the general sort of very thick, very sort of, you know, dense soundscape. And I think that is really where they sort of splinter apart, and where particularly Portishead you know, differentiate from their peers, I think.
Yeah, and also they kind of had a weird thing with fame. I mean, I don't want to say a weird thing, because everything but the girl had it too. Like, they wanted to be private more than they wanted to be famous. So they still existed, and they still did their things. Yeah. But they weren't trying to be a, you know, huge band. They weren't trying to rule the world or, like, make a whole bunch of money.
No, ironically, the sort of the person who I think, alongside Massive Attack, who really takes that trip hop sound and makes it part of their sonic sort of like soundscape, is actually Bjork. Like, Bjork, obviously, I think Bjork, obviously, at this point, this is 1992, 1993, Bjork has obviously left the Sugar Cubes, left her sort of, you know, who, you know, are starting to do electronic music, and Bjork is basically, you know, drenches herself in, like, trip hop and, you know, electronic dance music, and obviously that goes further on post, where she is, you know, collaborating with Tricky, who is one of the sort of the major figures in, you know, in British, you know, trip hop. And, you know, that's that sort of thing. And obviously from there it goes out into the world, and it's sort of everybody from, you know, Nine Inch Nails to, ironically, Ulva, who we spoke about on a previous Ulva ended up being a very electronic band, and, you know, some of their sort of mid 2000s material ends up being basically very dancey electronica, which is very strange for a bunch of Norwegians from a forest.
And by the way, if Geoff Barrow stumbles upon it and he hears us calling it trip hop, he is going to, like, rage on us. Just a heads up. Yeah. There is a tweet from around August 25th, 2019 by Geoff Barrow. And it's Studio 360 revisiting the Bristol bands, so it was their 25th anniversary. And then Geoff just says, "I wouldn't bother. If you're already describing it as trip hop, it's obvious you haven't got a fucking clue what you're talking about."
Yeah, I'm looking at the tweet now. You know, I feel Portishead are adjacent to trip hop. What they are doing is it's sort of trip hop in the way that it's that sort of it's next door to trip hop. Yeah, absolutely. I'm with Geoff on this. I would describe it as essentially electronic music. I think that's probably a little bit it's sort of like so. Let's go back to the start. So Joe, who are Portishead?
Okay, so Portishead started out as
Yeah. I mean, Portishead. Yeah, Portishead is a place. I think we should start with.
Yeah, it is a place near Bristol,
yep.
And so that's how it got its name. So that's
it's in Somerset.
Pretty much, on the nose how it got attributed with the Bristol sound.
Yeah.
So Geoff Barrow and Beth Gibbons, who is the vocalist, meet during an enterprise allowance course. And enterprise allowance is one of those things set up by Margaret Thatcher of all people.
Yeah, so it's basically, oh god, as the Brit I kind of have to explain. So in the 80s they basically went, okay, you can here start a company or start an organization yourself. This isn't the, I think if I remember correctly, obviously a lot of small enterprises in the 80s were sort of basically created by this. It was basically go and actually, here is a startup fund to go and start a business. And some of those end up with being Creation Records, the amusingly profane British magazine Viz Magazine, and the fashion brand Superdry. But I'm pretty sure there were other bands formed from the allowances So there, there are other bands that were formed from this. That basically went, okay, we're going to take your startup cash and we're basically going to go and start a rock band. People go and that wasn't against the thing. All people started labels, or and the band Half Man Half Biscuit started out like this. So it's like So essentially, they it's basically, here is some capital to start a thing, and obviously we're not going to get into the rest of Thatcherian politics, but otherwise we'll be here.
Yeah, no.
no.
Like we've already delved way past that, but
yeah. Anyway,
but essentially that's how they met, and they started recording together.
Mm-hmm.
But then they met Adrian Utley at where they were recording, and Adrian Utley was kind of the gel that brought it all together, because he was the person who brought the ideas of sampling and theremins, which plays very prominently in Dummy, and brought all of this, which gave it the atmosphere to it.
Yeah, because atmosphere pervades the entirety of Portishead's discography. They are
Absolutely.
A band who sell them, who you basically the first thing you hear is atmosphere. I mean, so there's a little thing. Obviously, we're going to get into the record itself properly. When the album was released, obviously on the 22nd of August 1994, this is I don't know how substantiated this is. People took this back to their record shop, going, there's loads of tape hiss on this, and it's like the record shops apparently had a thing from Portishead. I don't know whether this is entirely apocrypha or whether it's Portishead building their own sort of mono myth. It's like, and Portishead had a flyer or a handout with a record going, yeah, it's meant to sound like that, because obviously a lot that sort of warm lo-fi sound, that warm sort of lo-fi sound pervades the record, and it's it's meant, you're meant to hear the tape hiss and everything on it. So that's the sort of atmosphere that Portishead are creating. But Portishead at this point haven't actually got round to making Dummy yet. They are doing something a lot weirder.
Yes, they are making a short film. Yes, How to Kill a Dead Man. Which
has a poster which I'm quite impressed by.
Yeah. The still from the album is from the short How to Kill a Dead Man.
Yeah.
And this feels like 20-somethings just with their creative energies explosion and getting together and doing something.
Yeah.
there's a reason you haven't seen it a lot, just because I don't think it's very good. I don't think they think it's very good. It's about a leader of a country who gets seemingly assassinated by this guy, and then his wife gets like put in this place where she just gets to relive her husband getting shot over and over again. And my interpretation and what like the description I would read later said differ, but then she and then she later like hires the guy to kill her husband who is still alive. So
it's one of these things.
Chess. They play a lot of chess because it is
one of those films.
I don't want to say amateur film. It's still, I mean, it's really well shot, but it uses a lot of the simplified symbolism like chess that a first-time filmmaker or Guy Ritchie making Revolver would use.
So Guy Ritchie 3 or 4 films there. Yeah, it's one of these films that sort of like, you know, it's, hey, a band made a film, and it's like, you know, by standards of bands making films, it's not terrible. It is, however, like the product of 20-somethings who are going, right, this is basically how we're going to promote ourselves, because, you know, it's, you know, this is sort of like the prelude to Dummy, and they basically use this to get a record contract, and, you know, go, hey, look, we've made this film. Hey, you know, it's basically, you know, a long music video. So they basically made this, got a record thing, and then released the album off the back of this. As one does. Cool.
So, we're ready to talk about Dummy now, aren't we?
We are ready to talk about Dummy. By the way, the cover of this is great. It's like one of those great, you know, early to mid sort of 90s British alternative album covers that's like, it's not one that sort of, you know, gets homaged a lot, but it's just absolutely unmistakable. Which is the only thing I'm gonna...
We'll go to talk about, like, all of the people who love this album or love Portishead. Yeah. And you can just go by this album cover and tell, Akira Yamaoka, the composer for most of the Silent Hill games, was definitely inspired by this.
Definitely,
the album.
Yeah. So, the other sort of really major thing to sort of talk about before we actually get into the album proper is, so this album uses sampling, but it's like, so what they basically did, I don't know, they must have had like bizarrely enough, access to like a fairly substantial like record production thing, because they basically, so obviously this album does use standard, like, you know, turntable samplings. Obviously, a lot of the time Geoff Barrow live does just do the decks, you know, so you know, and the sort of the sonic, you know, the sonic stuff from the turntables. The thing is, on that turntable is not only like the samples. I mean, each track has like one sample, and a lot of it is obviously, you know, very buried in the mix, and you can't really recognize it. But they sort of put their own music onto it, and then started to manipulate stuff, and, you know, to make this sort of sound like the other records that they, you know, obviously the stuff that they probably got out of like a record bin or, you know, a charity shop or whatever. You know, they are basically distressing their own vinyl, you know, walking them, and, you know, recording everything through damaged, you know, they're recording like a lot of the sound through a broken amplifier. You know, it has a sense and like a vibe of itself. You know,
there is a texture to it.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a texture, like, especially people like Akira Yamaoka do, because it provides an atmosphere that's like that. The best I can describe it is in Pink Floyd's The Wall, when there's like, it's it's the guy just watching TV.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's just the world behind it. Like, this is a person alone by themselves in a dark room, at midnight or whatever, and they're maybe listening to something, or something's on the television, or something like that, and it has that feeling, or that it's either like feels like it's haunting them, or it kind of barely registers to them because they are just trapped in their own head.
It's music for solitary people lit by screens.
Yo, hi.
Hi. Yeah. It's as I said, this is like it's very like, so the other major influence on this, and I can sort of see like late teens Joe's like spectrum of sort of like interest, sort of like thinking this is very noirish and very sort of spy. I mean, the comment, a lot of the contemporary reviews sort of like compare this to spy movies, and John obviously, particularly to the work of John Barry, who obviously did a lot of the
Well, there's obviously that bass and the jazz guitar and a lot of it, and their short film definitely had a spy feel to it, but it
permeates
all
further
feels
than that.
Like it all feels like something. I'm gathering my thoughts here. Let me have 1 second so I just don't like ADHD myself out of this, but it feels like a film in that there is something giant or massive feeling going on around it, but there is this most intimate feeling between one or two people going on in the middle of it, and that is the most massive feeling in the world, despite everything that's going on around it.
Yeah, precisely.
That is the feeling I get from Dummy and their self-titled album.
Yeah, the self-titled album is very much a continuation of this. I mean, it comes out 3 years later, but it obviously, it basically continues this trend. There's very limited, changes to, it's one of these sort of follow-up Semaphore albums where they go, if the formula isn't broken, why change it?
They add a few more obvious live instrumentations to yes, we are doing this. We aren't just a trip-hop band. Jeff is very mad that they're being called trip-hop.
Yeah. So, shall we start at the beginning?
Yes. Which is Mysterons. Which is, kind of a way to start, because it starts with the theremin.
Yep.
And it's derived from a British TV show.
Ah, yes, Captain Scott. So, this takes its title, and the sound is sort of like, is reminiscent of a Jerry Anderson puppet series called Captain Scarlet. This is the same guy who did Thunderbirds, and it's sort of this very, the typical, 1950s, 1960s, Red Scare sort of like, theremin, the sort of thing you get on like, Attack of the Whatevers, and it atop this sort of like this almost sort of like slightly kitschy, it's an album which should be kitsch. A lot of this stuff put together is, 50s, 60s revivalism, and it really should be basically this should be, the sort of slightly tongue-in-cheek stuff that, for lack of a better word, frankly, the Propeller Heads were doing about, 2-3 years later with Shirley. Oh, look, we got Shirley Bassey, we got Big Beat, we got, we're gonna do a James Bond theme.
They were doing it in a fun way, and this feels like somebody's watching something old at like 4 in the morning or 6 in the morning. I don't know if the British had this same thing, but like if you like the moment a station would click on Saturday mornings or Sunday mornings, they would have like old stuff that nobody wanted anymore. And this feels like the singer is has that on in the background because they can't take silence or something like that. So they have this
Yeah.
like old sci-fi movie or series or whatever in the background, and it's like 4 or 5 in the morning.
Yeah, and that sort of basically sets the scene for the, you know, the entire album, realistically, which is like, so it's sort of like the lyrics. Sorry,
Yeah, no, it's fine. I'm just like, and like the major thing is Beth Gibbons' vocals. I know we haven't talked about it, but she has like these spooky vocals, and they are processed just the same mostly. Like she kind of echoes, like, I don't know, almost like she is even separated from the emotions, like she can't reach it sometimes, and sometimes she's very in tune with it, but that would be we'll talk about that more in their follow-ups. But like she makes this band as much as anything else, as much as the samples, because she just has this haunting, like, occasionally broken voice. And like when I watched the live at Roseland, New York City, like in the middle of the set she just breaks out a cigarette and is smoking it while she is singing, and it's like, oh yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly how I imagined the lead singer of Portishead. But it's the lyrics are like very poetic. It seemed like it's a little, you get an idea of what she's talking about, but not exactly. I mean, in my mind, it's a guy who is like pretending he never did anything wrong and everything's fine, and he threw away the relationship for not admitting anything is his fault and there's anything he needs to fix. And it's just like and then there's the chorus, all for nothing, and it's like, did you really want, repeated over and over, which is like, did you really want me? Or I don't know. That's the vibe I get. I'm sure Genius and everything else has other thoughts.
The sort of thing is, obviously, that this is from an interview that Barrow and Utley did some years ago. The thing is also, Portishead's media appearances are, and frankly live appearances are sparse. Portishead move at their own pace. I think they recently reunited about a couple of years ago, obviously in aid for the charity War Child, obviously regarding the Ukraine conflict, and that was their first appearance in 7 years. They are, you know, they are three busy people. They have always sort of had this sort of sense of being somewhat above that rude beast of celebrity, and you know, interviews with them are few and far between. But Barry says this, and obviously, you know, Barry mentions, you know, this is again, you know, Barry Gray, who is the person who did the soundtrack for, you know, Thunderbirds and Stingrays, etc. It's the, you know, you listen to these suites of music, and you know, they're these big orchestras. You know, this is for a little sci-fi puppet show. You know, it's little, you know, these people, these little, you know, foot-high marionettes on strings, and you know, it's this great, you know, sort of Bond-esque score for, like, you know, these really dark, you know, and obviously, you know, Barry Gray, I think, is a little bit of an unsung, you know, figure in, you know, television and film music, and it's sort of like, you know, the Portishead do, you know, are a band at least that seem to carry the torch for his sonic impact upon, you know, scoring music in the 60s and 70s. It also features an Audens Marriott Marnot, which is the musical instrument that Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead uses a fair bit on his more contemporary music.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, Johnny Greenwood mentioned. Moving on. So this is
Sour Times.
Sour Times. So this is one of the 3 singles. This is single number 2.
And it had a weird inverse of singles release, and I don't want to say how good they are, but how much they could have drawn an audience. Their first one, like, is a weird choice, and we'll get to that. And this one is, this one's better. It definitely has the like use of sample that really draws it in.
Yeah, it's just Lalo Schifrin.
Lalo Schifrin's Danube Incident, and
from more Mission Impossible.
I call them Lalo Schifrin. I don't know if it's Lalo.
Lalo Schifrin. Yeah, which is from the 1967 album More Mission Impossible.
Yes. Yeah, he did a lot of great stuff later too. Like
he stood around.
Just go listen to the opening credits to Magnum Force. That I don't like the movie Magnum Force, but that opening credits sound is fire.
Yeah, and obviously the soundtrack for Bullet, the Amityville Horror, and the Rush Hour trilogy.
The Rush Hour trilogy, and I can't even remember the Steve Martin Queen Latifah romantic comedy's name, but he did the soundtrack to that, and it was light and like delightful, even though the movie wasn't, because
he's still around and still working, which is glorious.
He's Argentinian, which I didn't realize.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, he's obviously, and his most famous creation will always be the opening for Mission Impossible, which is just like which is the big band sort of like that the sound, and obviously he also did the soundtrack for Enter the Dragon, which sort of obviously did that. He's a man who he's another unsung figure of cinematic music. I really like this track. It's sort of like I feel where Portishead used samples, they are used very sparsely and very, very sparingly. They when they have a sample, it is we've talked about sampling a lot on the last few episodes, and obviously it is enmeshed so much into this, and obviously they slowed it down or sped it up in this case, and it sort of meshes so nicely into it that it's like it's not like for example, if we take Massive Attack and we take sort of a Man Next Door, which obviously uses the When the Levee Breaks sample, it's like that's the Levee Breaks sample. This is enmeshed into the thing, and it adds to that sort of the thing I'm going to say about Portishead, which I think sort of I don't really happens or doesn't really feel a term that I would use to describe any other band of that scene is sophistication. This is sophisticated. This is the sort of this is sophisticated music. This is there is a nuance and a maturity, which considering Portishead at this point were like mid. Portishead
they're mid-famous British band, but in 1998 they could get an orchestra. And they could get a hall in New York City. Yeah. And they could walk in, they could do an act, and then they could walk out, and then Tar could walk in and then do her composition or whatever or something, and nothing would miss a beat. So there's that feeling about them. Yeah,
but like Geoff Barrow at this point is 22, which is like they're all young, young 20s-ish, and it's like apart from Adrian actually is a little bit older than the rest of the band, but this is a bunch of 20-year-olds basically making this sort of dark, sexy spy world sort of music Somebody compares them actually to the sort of a Lynchian comment about particularly sour times.
There is an Angelo Badalamenti quality about it, and that's there is definitely given the composer of Silent Hill and everybody else. There is that kind of quality to it, and obviously. Akira Yamaoka was also inspired a lot by Angelo Badalamenti, so you can hear a lot in the Silent Hill 2 soundtrack. You can just hear it switching from Angelo Badalamenti to trip hop often.
It's like, yes, I, Akira Yamaoka, have studied your Portishead well and will absolutely. I mean, to be fair, Akira Yamaoka is a really, really good composer.
He is extremely good. He is great. We're not like saying, oh, he just took all of this. No. He is absolutely brilliant. All of these people are absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Portishead are absolutely brilliant. I mean, so I got to be upfront here. This is 2 tracks in. I have never listened to Dummy before. Like Joe, I have had this on rotation for about the last 2 weeks. This is I basically, obviously, you know, I have had this pretty much on from the moment I get home to the moment I go to bed for about 2 weeks, and yeah, this is. I get it.
Yeah,
you know, I get it.
Like this, especially like mid-20s. Just what has my life come to? Where is it going? I am stressed. I am sad. This isn't what I expected life to be.
Yeah.
What the hell is going on now? And like I don't know. You can call it a headcanon, you can call it whatever. Take the 3 albums as 3 different nights this person is processing like their life as it stands. And like this is very mid-20s, like just fighting between my life isn't turning out how I thought it was, and like nostalgia. Like I really think Sour Times is like it was a relationship they had for a while. It fell apart because of the games they play. That's my interpretation. And then, but there's that nostalgia, like nobody loves me, because nobody loves me. It's true, not like you do, because there's that emotion, like, yeah, this all sucks, this all fell apart, but like I didn't have that emotion, and that emotion is the only thing that's sticking right now, despite all of the things around it.
Yeah. And the fragility of Beth Gibbons' voice is the perfect vehicle for this to, you know, to arrive. You know, there are points where her voice is really quite, I don't know whether I don't know if there's treatment on her voice. I don't know if they are, you know, doing, you know, some, you know, if between the 3 of them they are doing some sort of audio trickery on it. But there is really like almost a brittleness compared to like the rest of the this warm vinyl world that, you know, the Gibbons is characters existed, or Gibbons as, you know, a voice exists in. It's, you know, this brittle sort of broken fragility to her voice on quite a lot of it that's really quite remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we have anything else to say about
Strangers, track number 3.
Strangers, it's it was amazing on the live album just because it's the last track they do. And then they do this like Lalo Schifrin like end of the credits breakdown, which is fucking amazing. But this album version is extremely good as well. It is where they get their, you know, this is definitely trip hop inspired, or this song is by itself is very trip hop, because it starts that like stuttering beat that just goes through the entire song, and it grounds it. Yeah,
very beat driven compared to the first 2 tracks on the record. So this samples the American jazz fusion band Weather Report, and Elegant People is the track there, and Wait Please by Ed Harris. The string sample of this is basically obviously a very treated, you know, section of Elegant People. But you know, again, they get very, very treatment. This has been sampled by some very interesting individual. So this has been
no doubt.
Part of Strangers have been sampled within Slugs by Little Ugly Mane, Stuck in My Ways by Vince Staples, and the beautifully titled Legend of the East Pyramids by Spaced Ghost Perp. Which is the best band name I've heard today. I don't know who Space Ghost Perp are, but you certainly have a magnificent band name. Well done, you.
Well, there's.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to top the favorite one, which is multiple bands took the Mystery Science Theater 3000 line Roji Panty Complex and made that a band name.
Oh, bloody hell. That is a band
There
name.
were at least 2 of them on MySpace, but then MySpace. So I have no idea if one became dominant, if any of them became like even underground famous, but Roji Panty Complex. Somebody already took that band name, and they already knew that was a great band name. So
yeah.
Moving on.
And there it is. Right. Anyway, but so next, Strangers is great. It's very beat driven. I don't really have anything to say apart from it. It's a nice break from the sort of more ambient-y sensibilities of the first 2 tracks. It's a nice breathe. Well, a nice sort of like different sort of sensibility. I think.
If there is something about Dummy I can say in comparison to the other albums, it doesn't stay in the same gear. It sort of stays in the same emotion, but it has different experiences of sort of the same emotion or different aspects of it throughout the album. Especially Portishead's third, it kind of stays the same emotion for most of the album, and then it has the ironic 1 minute 30 happy song in the middle, and then it's back to wherever it wants. It's like a Fiona Apple album.
Bloody hell.
For Portishead third, and that kind of depends on if you are going to really like that one or not.
Yeah, that's
but
fair. I mean,
anyway, back to here. It's you know, it's kind of the same pondering about like this person, the relationship. They were probably close, but they were still strangers because she couldn't, find her way inside it, which is why it's called Strangers.
Yeah.
And did you realize no one can see inside your view? Did you realize for why this site belongs to you? And it's just like, we can't get beyond ourselves. More of that. Yeah. And and of course, if you have a different interpretation, that's fine. These are perfectly poetic lines that
yeah, you
can take it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it doesn't look like it. Like there is no breakdown of who is the band's major lyricist. I'd be surprised if it isn't Gibbons. As I said, a lot. Obviously, the next track, obviously, we're talking about, which could be sweet, is definitely written by her because it is written by her. But as I said, there is a lot of. As I said, what I mean this in a good way. That they are very opaque lyrics. There is obviously it's not even there's a universalism to it. It's more you can read a lot of different things into these lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think is more the sensibility.
And my interpretation is just like how I'm interpreting the album, and how I'm like this one night where this woman is trying to figure out her life.
Yeah.
And it's just all coming to a head on like a 2 a.m. Saturday night, Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Something like that. Oh
yeah, that is music very much of that sort of nothing sort of time but at the weekend where you haven't really you're sort of mulling things over. Yeah, it could be sweet. It's sort of more of this. So this is written by Beth Gibbons before Portishead formed, and this was basically remade from a demo version sung by Beth herself to the album. This is one of the deeper cuts on the record. I don't think they've ever done it live. It's a nice little song. It's very pretty. And that's the thing. Portishead don't seem to do pretty so much. In their, I'm not saying that prettiness isn't in their wheelhouse. It's more, where do what do you, as a band like Portishead do what do you is there an aesthetic quality you need to have to your music, etc. I think. Yeah, prettiness is not something they really have to consider, I think.
Yeah, it is this it's still brittle, of course.
Yeah.
But there is this feeling that she likes this relationship she's in, but she's afraid of what it's going to become, and just that fear. So there's that hope. There's that hope, and then there's that, reluctance in it, and she captures it perfectly. My only thing is, unfortunately, with the creation of South Park, I cannot listen to this song without hearing Cartman saying, "It could be sweet."
Oh God,
Cartman
is this
has
actually
ruined-
references?
No.
No.
It's just the word "sweet."
Okay.
Like
That'd be a very
Cartman has
strange
ruined
cut
the
for-
word "sweet." It's a sweet guy.
That'd be a very strange and very deep cut for Portishead to go. For South Park to go. Portishead.
They did this before South Park was even created.
Oh yeah,
it's just this coincidental thing, and it's just like
I see.
I can't unhear it because my
Make it go
brain
away.
is a mess of references and
Pop culture.
all of the culture in my head.
Yeah, that's fair. Moving swiftly on.
Yes.
Track number 5. I love Wandering Star. Wandering Star's great.
Okay. I'm fine with it. It's just it captures a certain thing, but like it's a very wandering song, and I'm very ADHD, and you need to nail my attention down, otherwise it's gonna wander.
Yeah, the scratching on this, I'm gonna be honest, sort of like you can. Obviously, I don't know. I think DJ Shadow came obviously a little bit later than this, but you can sort of hear that sort of the sort of way that DJ Shadow scratches. That sort of sensibility. It's more it's not that wow wow wow. It's the sort of it's the sort of the use of it as an aesthetic as well as a sonic tool, so to speak. It's it's not we're just putting a load of scratching in because we've got a turntable and we are creating something new from the way we are scratching this to produce this disjointed or whatever piece of music, or this thing with deliberate gaps and refrains in of itself.
Yeah. Absolutely, and it's way different than when Uncle or DJ Shadow would just use the they would go overboard with using the samples.
Yeah.
Obviously, introducing is nothing but samples.
Yeah.
It is definitely using it not to fill noise, but to create this solemn atmosphere.
Yeah.
Especially for Wandering Stars, it does have that Hammond organ feeling in the background, you would have for maybe a David Lynch thing that there is still this. I mean, David Lynch has put more silence in it because he finds it creepier, and probably for the better, but there would be that feeling in the background that there is something wrong, and that would be that lightest bit of a Hammond organ in the back, and there is that feeling of space because Wandering Star and the emptiness around it.
Yeah, so this samples, by the way, Love is the track Magic Mountain from the album Love Is All Around by Eric Burdon and War. Otherwise named, which is a very, which is obviously a very, soul funk sort of thing. Again, it's Geoff Barrow's record collection or access to the record collection is quite deep and varied, and it's not putting a sample on for the hell of it. It's there is a deliberate sonic choice to sample this.
Yeah, and even if it seems it's more than that, but it feels like, what if we slowed this down? And then it's like when they sped up Rick Astley and it sounds like a Magical Girl theme song. It's like then they slow it down and they figure out which songs have the horror atmosphere or just this really creepy empty vibe, and there's like one big
Yeah.
sample that will like fit in with this way later, but
Yeah.
or
I mean,
soon
yeah.
later. I don't know.
I mean, entire genres have been formed from speeding up and slowing down and chopping up records. I mean, vaporwave, for example, is just is basically,
Yes.
hey, what if we slowed down "It's Your Move" by oh, for God's sake, I've forgotten a fucking name. Yeah, that that sort of thing. It's what you the mark of a good band or a good group or a good musician in how they use sampling is how that sample is used. That sounds really obvious, but it's you can do really obvious things with samples, or you can go, let's just basically make this put this in service to the piece of music. Let's make this really esoterically weird sounding. Bury the sample. And obviously, Portishead are very good at meshing these samples into the the rest of the sound.
Yeah.
So then we get to "It's a Fire," which is not on the original version of the album or on the vinyl version. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good song. I can see why they felt it didn't need to be on there. It kind of has a separate feeling, but it still fits into the mood. I mean, it's kind of it's very much my life isn't working how I thought it was, but there is like a more hopelessness than there is like this melancholy. So it's a little deeper, and I can I get why it's on the latter part of the album, because it's just like all of these emotions are starting to break the person.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's the.
And I should note there's also like "Breathe On, Little Sister," "Like a Fool." So she is trying to like re-up herself to like be able to take this stuff, but there is definitely the emotions are getting to me.
Yeah, I'm trying to work out if that's a deliberate reference to Little Sister from the fucking hell. What's the vampire film?
I don't know.
Oh God, the Joel Schumacher, Lost Boys. There we go.
Lost Boys. Okay. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I've watched The Lost Boys twice in my life. Once when I was way too young to.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. And then we come to single number 2, which is "Numb." "Numb" is the first single, and this was basically the world's introduction to those strange trio from Portishead, and
it didn't do much.
No.
Oddly enough, it was an introduction to their sound. It doesn't grab you like the other singles do.
No.
Because obviously it's numb. It's it's about becoming emotionally numb by your experiences. So it's not a very moving song. Not that it doesn't like have emotion to it, but it's not like your ears don't like perk to what you're listening to in the way Sour Times and Glory Box does.
So this is contemporary sort of reviews of this. This is obviously the world's first introduction to Portishead. Andrew Smith, melody maker, wrote "Eerie, slow burning and cinematic, the spiritual love child of Billie Holiday, the American jazz musician, and Jazzy B, who was the founder of a British soul group, British group Soul to Soul." Scary stuff. The rumours about Portishead are obviously true, but to sort of indicate how like low Portishead's profile is, obviously Music and Media, which is a Pan-American, a European magazine, go not to be confused with U2's Number, though, which is Numb, which was released about about a few months earlier in film, obviously Zeropa in 1993. Although they share the love of the cinema, with their short film To Kill a Dead Man bear as much suspense for this song and a fever spirit. It's basically this is weird and interesting and very moody and a little bit of jazz. But yeah, this is like basically this is not really out of the gates and immediately massively popular.
Yeah, it's accurate, but it's probably wasn't the right move.
Yeah,
I mean,
there are
not
other.
to say it isn't a very good song, and it doesn't fit in with the rest of the album, and I don't love it the same as like I love the rest of the album. So, but it's if you're gonna release a single, this isn't the single if you want attention. But also, Portishead sometimes didn't feel the need for attention, so there's that.
No, yeah. This would not chart in the US or United States or the UK, but landed at 213th in Australia's top 300 charts. Despite this being the lead single, it would be overtaken by Glory Box. Yeah, it's it's a song about loneliness and numbness, and that's where the title comes from.
And I'm faking it till I make it. I don't think I'm making it. Because it's very much about how I am deceiving everybody about who I really am, and what I really am is this empty shell.
Yeah, this is so next track, which is Roads. Roads is
I would call Roads my favorite album or favorite song on the album.
Yeah, that's fair.
It is.
I'd agree. Yeah,
it is very pure, and its sample goes hard with her vocals, and it is amazing. And I mean, if you could criticize it, it's kind of one note for what it does. I mean, it keeps pushing that late night Hammond organ sound.
Yeah, so that's
her desperation, there's another part that feeds into the late night television. It feels like a lot of the organ people would use on 70s shows, in between scenes or something like that.
So yeah, the keyboard riff is inspired by John Carpenter, who obviously, in addition to making films, obviously does the soundtrack for a lot of it. This is apparently, according to Geoff, based on when the little girl gets shot in Assault on Precinct 13 by the ice cream van. It's a Fender Rhodes keyboard, and it's really wicked. But yeah, so it basically goes, hey, it's a John Carpenter homage. There's obviously a lot of more John Carpenter homaging on Portishead's third album to date, which is I think just entitled
Third.
I don't know, third, which is what you call a third album, I guess.
Yes.
This is very, and obviously it's harking to a very different cinematic sound. This is apparently, I don't know if this is Geoff and Adrian slightly taking the piss. Apparently this is a Braveheart reference. We got a war to fight, ever find our way out, regardless of what they say. It's apparently these are allusions to Braveheart.
Okay. I didn't get that off of it, but
no.
Yeah.
Or influenced by Braveheart, apparently.
At this point, we're just you gotta move forward with your life. It's gonna be a battle. I don't know what the right path is. And never find our way regardless of what they say. And no matter, you're doing just fine, whatever. It's no, I don't feel like I'm doing just as fine. I feel like I'm just fucking up. No matter what I do, I'm fucking up. And it captures that in a far more elegant, more, I don't want to say spiritual, but there is that just existential feeling that haunts this entire song, and I just absolutely love it for that.
Yeah, absolutely. This would turn up in, so Rhodes would be used in 2 films. The first of which is Nadja, which is a early 90s vampire film set in New York. So this would also feature Strangers on the soundtrack. I think this is one of Peter Fonda's last films. Yeah, it just features Rhodes and Strangers, and Soon by My Bloody Valentine, which should indicate what period we are dealing with. Yeah, I mean, we will eventually get around to the massive record that is Loveless at some point. It also appeared on the Tank Girl soundtrack.
Of all movies, Tank Girl,
Girl.
which is the most early to mid 90s movie you can imagine.
Yeah.
Like, it is that. Like, just how strange, off the wall, quote unquote alternative.
Yeah, the soundtrack is stuffed with alternative. This is like basically a who's who of alternative music in like the early 90s. I mean, you've got bloody Hole, Bush, 2 Bjork tracks, Ice-T, Veruca Salt, or another American punk band.
And to put a point in this, Ice-T does show up in the movie as a mutated kangaroo. So this tells you what we're dealing with.
Yeah. Ironically, also Tank Girl is also based on a comic by Jamie Hewitt, and obviously Jamie Hewitt and Damon Albarn, would obviously later sort of take on, elements of trip hop for obviously Gorillaz. So it's all connected. So there we go.
And there's a Cole Porter song in the middle of it too, just for kicks.
Because why not? Why not? Everyone loves Cole Porter. I really like Rhodes. I'd say Rhodes is probably my joint favourite track on the album, alongside Wandering Star. Any Pedestal?
It's kind of a Pedestal and Biscuit are kind of in an awkward situation because they're between Rhodes and Glory Box, and they're still very good. They still match the quality of the album, but it's just like you get two quote unquote life-changing songs, and then in between it you have these 2 songs that are fine, that are good. They're really good.
Yeah, this is one of these albums. I'm going to use the this is best listened to as obviously we've both done obviously with it on repeat. This is basically best listened cover to cover. There is a flow. Yeah. I mean, there is a flow to this record. Pedestal apparently features. Apparently Geoff Barrow took all of the frets off his bass for this. For some reason. Which is like.
Wasn't it to make the demo of this? And he didn't have another bass. And this is when they were in the starving artist phase, and they just did all of this for their art, or just, because they needed this to get to where they wanted to be, or something like that. And it's just one of those things you feel you have to do in the moment. And then later it's a story for after you're big, and it's like, well, we did this. We were crazy.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's like the thing is because it is part of this flow. It's like this album doesn't have bad tracks. Like, I want to really sort of underline this. These are part of the journey, but this sort of like deep, this 2 a.m. of the soul sort of sensibility, where it's like you're sort of wandering from bad decision to bad decision, and it's like it happens. This is people have everybody's had a bad evening like this, or I can't sleep, it's 2 a.m. and things are going through my brain at a rate of knots sort of day, night. But everyone's had nights like that, and it is it's as I said, it is music of the night. I mean, it's obviously the middle of the British summer here, and obviously it's like just about getting dark about an hour ago. But it's that sort of sensibility of it's nighttime music for nighttime people, for lack of a better It's
Yeah.
a better word,
And
think.
I have been a nighttime person since literally when I was born. Like my mom would have to put me to bed at like 2 in the morning of rebroadcasts of the College World Series because that happened in June and I was born in May. And ESPN was first becoming a thing. So like I have been awake and people have tried to like, make me sleep, and eventually I just got a job on second shift. So I don't have to worry about, I am sleeping until noon. That's because I work until 11 or midnight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that is my natural schedule for me. So
yeah, as I said, it's very, very nighttime music. It's sort of like, there's the, particularly since obviously, Barrow and the rest of, this is, music, a lot of that sensibility with, Bristol in that period was, it's 3 a.m. time to go and do stuff at like, in a nightclub somewhere, or, go and do music at 3 o'clock in the morning, because that's, how people operate in underground scenes. That's like, there is that detachment from, the normality of, of time and place. Biscuit. I really like Biscuit.
Yeah, I really like Biscuit too. Again, it's in between, two of their best songs on the album, but it is a very atmospheric, haunting piece that like yeah.
So this is really where the sort of, I guess their sampling sort of takes on a really artistic thing. So the track sampled in this is a track by a 50s bubblegum pop artist called Johnny Ray, called I'll Never Fall in Love Again. What Portishead do is they do that sort of like, that sort of pull stretch, or that sort of, the term on YouTube obviously is slowed and reverb sort of thing to it, and it takes on this sort of ghostly, sensibility. It's no longer this silly, 50s bubblegum pop song about, there's
the happy version of I'll Never Fall in Love Again to the real version. Like they even put it on the bridge, and it's just like, it's their most famous bit of sampling, I think.
And it's
like
geniusly
where they just slow it down to I'll never fall in love again, it's all over now. And it's just like, it really pronounces that and puts it at its literal meaning.
It's sort of like, this is gonna sound like a really strange comparison. Like, go with me on this. So, you've obviously listened to Jesus, haven't you, Joe? the Kanye.
No.
It's the same. No, okay. So on Jesus, Kanye West takes a sample from a Hungarian band called Amiga, and it's basically a bit of 60s, 70s Hungarian progressive rock, and he slows it down to like this sort of like the film mid-90s also uses it to really great extent, and it's like there's this whole nostalgic this sort of this nostalgic explosion of sound, because obviously he takes it, and obviously he or whoever did the beat making for this particular track took it and slowed it down to sort of like this encapsulation of like this halcyon period, the 60s, this sort of sense of 60s rock, disappearing in the rear view mirror of that sort of thing, and it's sort of the same the same if even smarter here, because it's like it's juxtaposing this throwaway floppy probably cut out of a magazine sort of picture disc, or they back at the point where you get like a magazine and they'd have like a cover mount vinyl, and turns this into this sort of ever-present ghost on this track.
Yeah. And for the record, I'm usually 2 to 3 years behind things, and for Kanye West, I was 2 to 3 years behind his brilliant point. And like if you go to 2 to 3 years later, then that's when he goes crazy. And that's why I never got into Kanye West.
No,
So
no, absolutely.
It is essentially,
I mean,
it is essentially my fault for when he was brilliant, but it's also, and all you hear is just like his, like, talking to the media, which, and
did not go well.
You need help. You really honestly need help, and I'm
please help. Yeah, but
and I'm saying this as a creative who thought, like, when I was on medication, I would lose all of my creativity. That hasn't happened. It is just taking the edge off of whatever is causing the problems for everything else.
Yeah. I mean, I also don't subscribe to that. That that sensibility. It's not helpful. Anyway, so yeah, I really like Biscuit. It's a very clever piece of use of sampling. It's the sort of thing that I think in a couple of years after this that DJ Shadow would be doing with introducing really I think that sort of same clever juxtaposition of sampling.
And I suppose we have to talk about it.
Yep.
Last song of the album.
Last song of the album.
Probably their
Best
most famous
song.
Not best song of the album. I only say that because, like, there is this quality about it that you could hear it everywhere, in a commercial, in a film, in wherever, that I don't want to say cheapens it, because that's everybody else's fault. That's not the song's fault. But it's just like there's no way I can talk about this without feeling like I'm insulting it, because there's definitely, this is the most commercial, radio ready. Your ears are gonna immediately go to the radio whenever this is on, because like that sample is mad good. It's incredible. It brings your attachment, and lyrically, it's the one where it still has, they're in this mood, but they are moving forward, and there's been discourse on the song about gender roles and stuff like that, and it's just like, I don't know. I'm a dude, like, I should probably stay out of it, and I'm not. That doesn't sound to me like what is going on in this song.
Yeah.
But there is this feeling of moving forward, and it's just like it's a groovy song. It still has that melancholy, but it is, a positive melancholy. Like, I've gone through all of this shit, but I'm going to go forward and I'm going to do this. And regardless of what happens, because it's just like the chorus is like, give me a reason to love you. Give me a reason to be a woman. It's just like, give me a reason why I can be in a relationship with you. Just give me something I can use here. That's what she's saying. It's not like she wants, I don't think it's doing gender roles. It's just like, I am tired of this dating shit, and I get it. I totally get it, and I just want something solid. I want some ground I can stand on. Give it to fucking me. I'm giving you a shot right fucking now. Do it.
Yeah. Also, it's just underpinned by probably the absolute left field sample, which is this Isaac Hayes sample for the album Isaac's Mood, which is obviously Ike's Rap 2, and it's like, this is not like it. This is obviously not like you would even think of this. This Isaac Hayes.
How would you ever find this?
Yeah.
And I say this as a huge soundtrack nerd who is just like, has been listening to like the full versions of like songs from soundtracks that they put on the Warner Brothers archive and they released it for 5 minutes, and then now it's just on YouTube to find, unless you want to buy the album for $100. I am that kind of soundtrack nerd, and I wouldn't think of going to this, but it is such a perfect sound sample. It is one of the samples of the 90s, I would think, because when you think like a sample that makes a song, the sample in Glory Box makes this song, because it immediately gets you into this.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
like everybody has paid notice. I don't know how much it was used commercially. I didn't look that up, but it feels like this would be used in a lot of commercials, and it's why when I talk about How to Kill a Dead Man, it comes off as a 10-minute perfume commercial for rich people who consider rich women who consider themselves dangerous. And the reason is, like, Flory Box comes in at the end, at least on the YouTube version. And it feels like that, how that would be used in, like, one of those artistic commercials for really overpriced brands.
You say that it was indeed used for the perfume Guerlain in France, which,
yes, no fucking surprise.
Yeah, and an Apple commercial, and actually there's at least 2 or 3 perfume commercials, and apparently
Yes.
Marks and Spencer, which is an upmarket British food retailer. I am not remotely surprised to see any of those in that, and apparently also in a Levi's advert as well, so yeah. Oh, and a Heineken advert featuring Daniel Craig.
Yeah. Why not?
Why not? And that's the sort of thing, like, I am genuinely surprised, and perhaps it's because Portishead are not a band who, do things at anybody else's pace, but as I said, I of that sort of 90s stable, I'm surprised that Portishead has never done or never been approached for a Bond,
just
a Bond,
Portishead.
Yeah,
a Bond
soundtrack,
yeah.
a Bond theme.
I said this at one point, but every Portishead song, you'll find a comment that says, "Why weren't they used for a Bond theme?" or "Why wasn't this a Bond theme?" Especially because they use the jazz guitar. You can hear and the bass in the background. I was like, boom, 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 boom. Like it all sounds very Bondish, like very huge and very personal.
Yeah, but it might be because basically Portishead have gone, well, we don't need to soundtrack a Bond film because, this is our Bond film, something like that. As I said, from what I've read about around Portishead, they don't strike me as a band who move to other people's tune. If they want to do a Bond theme, they'll do a Bond theme. If they don't want to be a Bond theme, there is no power on earth that can make them want to do a Bond theme.
And even if you call them trip hop, they're like, Geoff is gonna go, nope, shut down.
Nope. Shut it down. Yeah. So that is the album itself. I mean, as with I think obviously rather more immediately than Paul's Boutique, but this is an album that has its fans, shall we say.
Yeah. People with very good taste love this album. And I don't say this because I love this album and I picked this out of, like, more iconic, bigger albums that I could have selected from. I selected this.
Yeah.
Because I love it. And I have good taste, god damn it.
Yeah, I mean, the number of accolades this, so I'm just gonna, this is obviously, we're just on the relevant thing. So this was Melody Maker's album #1 of the year. Mojo, one of Mojo's top 25 albums of 1994. The New York Times list of top albums of 1994. NME's top 50 albums of 1994, number 6. Number 168 in NME's list of the 500 greatest albums of all time in 2013. On Rolling Stones' essential recordings of the 90s. Put number 2 on Fact Magazine's top 50 trip hop albums, which probably got an angry letter from Geoff Barrow going, "What are you doing?" And The Wire's 1994 record of the year. It's also on Apple Music's reasonably recent top 100 albums. It was number 67. So,
yes, and the reviews from the time and the retrospective reviews are all positive. They're very popular, and the Sportos, the Motorheads, Geeks, Sluts, Bloods, Wastoids, Dweebies, Dickheads, they all adore it. They think it's a righteous album. and I'm not looking at Ferris Bueller's Day Off quotes from on the IMDb right in front of me just to say this.
Yeah, this is so. I mean, there isn't like a comprehensive list of people who are doing this. Obviously, Akira Yamamoto. Akira Yamamoto is a Portishead fan. A Portishead graphic appears in Silent Hill 3.
Yeah,
I think it's Silent Hill 3.
I think that's it.
Yeah, this is Ken. So I think it's sort of like to indicate, I think, how popular Portishead have gone. I think we actually have to go and look at what they've been doing with sort of like people since they made this. So Geoff Barrow is currently, when he's not in Portishead, is in a band called Beak, which I've actually seen live, which is sort of more krautrocky, more like a Germanic sound. Straight after their second album, Portishead would also collaborate with Tom Jones on Tom Jones's Reload, which
it's
a
two
fascinating record.
It is a fascinating record. Like, he's palling around with Robbie Williams, and then he's doing Motherless Child with Portishead.
Yeah.
It came out in America as Reloaded, and my mom kind of took that album away from me when she was cleaning out my car because she loves Tom Jones, which is fine. But I don't know if she immediately skipped, like... Portishead has 2 songs on this. They have Motherless Child, which made it to Reloaded, and then on Reload there's a cover of All Mine from Portishead's self-titled album, which I think the Portishead version is better. I think Tom Jones's version of Motherless Child is better because he like sings the hell out of it. But
this is also the record that would give him Sex Bomb, by the way. So this isn't just like this is Tom Jones's big comeback. Record for they hadn't done
and he also does a cover of Burning Down the House with the Cardigans, and there's just this all over the place, and your mileage may vary on how much you can take of it, but
I fucking love it.
I love a good amount of it. I really don't like a good amount of other of it, but what you like and who you like in this album depends entirely on the listener. Like, it is literally all over the place.
Yeah, it's like it's got the same energy, although far more consummately sung, like compared to the William Shatner. William
Shatner's with Ben Folds.
Oh dear.
Which is a good album. It's a good album too. It's just a different album doing a different thing. It's just like it's like I don't know if the Ben Folds Shatner album is Shatner has been. It's just like the Reload is Tom Jones, motherfucker.
Other than like obviously doing with Tom Jones, so Geoff Barrow has obviously formed a band formed the krautrock band Beak. He's also in the band Quakers, which is far more hip hoppy sounding. He is also basically Alex Garland's soundtracker of choice, and also does occasional production work for bands like Arcade Fire, The Horrors, and most peculiarly Run the Jewels.
Although Run the Jewels also have good taste, and they've worked with DJ Shadow on probably the song of the 2010s, Nobody Speak, which is like, whether anybody wants it or not, that is the song of the 2010s.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, period.
So he does a lot of soundtrack work. Adrian Utley, meanwhile, has basically been working with seemingly everyone in the universe. He did, he obviously, in addition to adding guitars to this, he did work on the American Psycho soundtrack. Sparkle Horses, It's a Wonderful Life. We should talk about Sparkle Horse at some point, because that is, a very interesting guy. Beth Gibbons is Out of Season, which obviously also features Paul Webb as Rustin Man, and that's obviously Beth Gibbons' first solo album. Production work with Marianne Faithfull. various collaborations and soundtracks for a couple of films as well, which just tend to be done with Alison Goldfrapp's sideman William Owen Gregory. So that's obviously he also does work with Philip Selway of Radio. There's he's a guitar slinger for hire, so he just basically appears when he needed. Beth Gibbons meanwhile has been doing whatever she feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
3 solo albums, including a live album which is with the Polish National Radio Symphony Orchestra, which is the music of I'm going to try and pronounce this name, Henry Gorenki, which was actually conducted by Krzysztof Penderecki, the guy who does all the really unnerving, quite disturbing music that appeared on The Shining, and then went back to doing a solo album which came out this year, which is Lives Outgrown, which is very, very good. And I recommend, if you like Beth Gibbons on Portishead, this is also quite an interesting, although a very different setting for her voice. Very, very, very good vocalist. She's done basically she's worked with again a grab bag of everyone from Joss Stone to Annie Lennox to Kendrick Lamar.
Yes.
Yes.
If you need to know how good of taste people have who love Portishead's Dummy, it goes all the way up to Kendrick Lamar. So there you go.
Yep. Yeah, why not? Why not? And she also did vocals on a Black Sabbath Stoner Rock song, which would indicate her sort of a Black Sabbath cover with a band Gonga, who are also from Bristol, which should indicate what Bristol is currently doing. Yeah. Anyway, that's sort of that's what they've been. We have been. This is probably the most I have listened to a lot of other things other than the album I'm supposed to be listening to, and I grabbed onto one half and Tom grabbed onto another half, and we have entirely different halves, so which tells you the breadth of both the Bristol sound and what it inspired and kind of the world it kind of built. Absolutely, yeah. This is, these 3 people are Portishead. I hesitate to call Portishead a supergroup, but sometimes, you have to realise that, its 3 members are very busy people who do a lot of stuff outside their band, and, absolutely, Portishead was that springboard to, interesting, collaborating with Polish composers and, Kendrick Lamar, and making soundtracks for Alex Garland, but that's how music is. This is a record that has. Let me pay it the highest compliment. You could release this today; it would be as beloved. Yeah, absolutely. And just a couple notes on their other stuff, Portishead's self-named album. It is also the same. It is very good. It has a couple of different moods. It starts with Cowboys, which is... I just want to talk about the Portishead self-titled album just to use this description. No, of course. Cowboys is like you were dating Shirley Bassey, and then Shirley Bassey turned out to be Satan. Oh, dear. And that is the song that plays once you realize Shirley Bassey is Satan. Because it has that, demented horror movie reveal about it. A lot of it still feels kind of the same. It doesn't reach the same gears I think the first album, but it does have a couple different moods, and it does use live instruments. So if you liked the Dummy, you are going to like Portishead. And third is they tried to drop all of the trip hop out of it, and they tried to make it is a woman completely destroyed and is occasionally interrupted by the machine from Pink Floyd's Welcome to the Machine is my best description of it. And occasionally they get attacked by a drum machine, which I know in Machine Gun the drum machine isn't a drum machine. It is a synth. It is a design perfectly. Don't at me. I understand. It just it sounds like a
being attacked by a drum machine, at least the song Machine Gun. It's
Mhm.
I don't think I have properly absorbed Third. I've listened to it like 2 or 3 times, but I want to say without the trip hop, it doesn't have the grounding to pay attention to it. I don't know. And this is probably me being a very, while I'm saying I have great taste, it's like my comparisons to Fiona Apple, it's just like Win the Pawn, it feels like everything is the same song to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And that Third kind of has that same feeling, except for in the middle they have this minute 30 song that is kind of like ironically happy and about how she is going to get through this and all of this, and you can just hear the irony, but it's a little break, and then it goes back to kind of the same mood, and occasionally gets interrupted by like an electronic kind of atmosphere that I don't know if it fits as well into the flow of the album as like the sampling and everything else in the previous 2 albums. So
yeah,
but like I said, I haven't listened to Third that much. I think in 2007 I was having my own crisis, and I probably shouldn't have listened to Portishead Third anyway. So
yeah. I mean, alongside this, obviously, is the live album Roseland NYC Live, which is, and even by live album standards, is fucking brilliant.
It is phenomenal. Like, if you just pick up Dummy and pick up Roseland Live, if there's any 2 like immediate buys you get, those are the 2. And Portishead 2, or the Portishead the self-titled album would be, still on there. Like, you can.
Yeah.
It's worth getting, and then, take a listen to Third, see if you like it, because, people, it definitely got positive reviews, and I'm not taking away, and I haven't, like, absorbed it. I don't have, like, a fully formed opinion, but, it's just, like, I never got the feeling I needed to go back in, like, this, like, the way Dummy is a part of my life, like, Third is, like, I can take it or leave it, which is not to say it is bad. It just doesn't grab me the same way.
Fair. Yeah.
Well.
That was yeah.
Anything
So that
else?
was. I think I've done. I think it's a fantastic album. I mean, this is one of these albums I would go. Yeah, if you're listening to this now and you haven't bought this album and you're going, I should probably buy this album. Go to a record store, go buy it now. Go on.
And there are 2 physical copies in America of the live album left. I'm gonna get paid Friday. Buy it, and then sorry, there's 1 copy left, and maybe it's still available when this is on, and you can go grab it, but I have my doubts.
Yeah. Well, they might have restocked by now, but anyway, Joe's got one of the copies. Joe's one of the 2 copies left in the United States of America.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Yeah. Great record. I have enjoyed journeying into this sort of noirish spy verse with you, Joe. So, yeah, thank you for introducing. Thank you for finally getting me round to listen to Portishead.
Yes. It was my duty. It's my duty.
Yeah. Yes, I will now go and convert other people to Portishead.
Yes.
Anyway. What are we talking about next episode, Joe? We are talking about.
Is this a numbered episode or is it an anniversary?
No, this is it might be a numbered. So, numbered episode coming up. We are going to be eventually talking about My Chemical Romance's 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge, which is a very, very me record. In terms of anniversary episodes, we will be in September. We'll be jumping ahead 5 years because 1994. I could have talked about the Downward Spiral. No, we're jumping ahead 5 years because Trent Reznor can only count in 5s, and we are talking about Nine Inch Nails' towering double disc monolith that is The Fragile. This is going to be an intense and interesting listen. Because I haven't listened to The Fragile in about a couple of years, and it's sort of it's big. It's big.
It's big. It's I own it as well. So yeah, I've listened to it a few times. Besides, like, you know, the songs I really like, and it's just like, yeah, it's very big and very. I don't want to say hard to get into, but it's like
there's a lot
size
to it.
and there's a lot to it, and it's hard to just put on and listen to unless your point is to listen to this.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll be talking about that in I think it's late September.
I think so. Maybe
September the 21st. So about a month's time.
So we might get an episode in, and eventually we will talk about the anime Bacano.
Yes, we'll get to that. We'll get to that fairly shortly. Hopefully, we'll get back to doing, you know, non-numbered episodes and just start banging these out, because finally I might be, you know, getting back to a working situation where I am not, you know, doing so much cover for work. Anyway, but that's not really relevant. We can be found on social media at Not So Final Prod on Twitter. Episodes like this are available first via our Patreon, and you can, if you want, you know, if you go, oh, Thom and Joe, 2025 is coming up, and I very much want you to review Demon Days, which will be turning 20 next year, or, you know, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, which will be turning God Almighty 30 years next year. Can you review that for me? We do take, you know, requests via the Patreon. We, you know, if you go, oh, I want you to talk about I don't know, you know, I really do, you know, want you to talk about Portishead self-titled. We you know, we have the Patreon. You can recommend things. We will get around to covering it. I'm sure Joe would happily talk about Portishead self-titled. You know, that Patreon can be found at patreon.com / the Thom and Joe Show. Thom is spelt with a H. If you are listening to this, obviously before November, obviously yes, there is going to be you know, obviously if you've read in the news, obviously Patreon is going to start charging via the iOS app if you order it. Please try and do it online, because it just makes things easier for us, and we're not having to charge you more for listening to us to talk for 2 hours about 90s records.
We are affordable, and we want to stay affordable.
We want to stay affordable. That's the main thing. You know. I don't agree with it. I think it's a stupid decision, but unfortunately, it's out of our hands. So if you can, you know, we would appreciate if you could, you know, subscribe to the Patreon. You're going to get the same material anyway. You know, you can listen to it on a computer. Come on. So yeah. Anyway, so if you are subscribing to the Patreon now, please do obviously bear that in mind. So we're not having to adjust it so that our current patrons are having to pay more to cover Apple. Anyway, thank you again, Joe, for introducing me to Portishead. We'll be back shortly, hopefully, with a numbered episode between this and Trent Reznor's towering double disc monolith. I've been Thom.
I've been Joe.
This has been the Thom and Joe Show. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.